Your soul recognized them before your mind had a single word for what was happening. Before the logic arrived, before the analysis began, before you started measuring compatibility and examining history and constructing the careful, rational case for why this person was or was not right for you, something in the deepest layer of your consciousness had already answered the question, quietly, completely, with the specific, unshakable certainty of something that does not require evidence because it is not operating from the part of you that processes evidence. It was already certain, and you have spent the time since that recognition doing what human beings do. When something true arrives too quickly for the mind to manage, you questioned it, you doubted it. You looked for reasons to be cautious, and reasons to be skeptical, and reasons to wait for more information before trusting what your interior had already, without hesitation, confirmed, because you have been burned before. Because the last time something felt certain, it turned out to be the trauma response, recognizing the familiar rather than the soul recognizing the true. Because you learned through direct, costly, irreversible the experience that the feeling of certainty is not always reliable, that intensity is not the same as alignment, that chemistry is not the same as genuine meeting. All of that is true, and all of that is not what this is. Here is the brutal truth that most people spend years avoiding because avoiding it is more comfortable than sitting with the specific, exposed vulnerability of accepting that it might be real. Soulmate recognition is not a feeling. It is not the romantic intensity of someone who has been without love for a long time encountering affection and flooding with relief. It is not the anxious attachment of a nervous system that has learned to mistake the familiar ache of uncertainty for depth. It is not the projection of an unhealed wound onto someone who arrived at a moment when you were ready to believe. It is a knowing, specific, located, arriving from somewhere beneath the emotional weather of the ordinary self, from the layer of consciousness that is not reactive, not conditioned, not shaped by history into the particular form of wanting that has been mistaking itself for genuine recognition for years. The difference between these two things, between the conditioning, one wanting, and the genuine knowing, is the most important distinction your interior life will ever be asked to make. And your intuition has been trying to make it for you all along, in signals, in specific, recurring, bodily, precise communications that carry information your mind cannot generate on its own. 5 of those signals follow, not as a checklist, as the recognition of something your soul has already been trying to tell you. There is a particular quality of stillness that arrives in the presence of someone your soul genuinely recognizes, and it is so different from what your nervous system has been doing for most of your relational life that the first time you feel it, you may not trust it. You may interpret the absence of anxiety as the absence of feeling. You may read the specific, unfamiliar calm of someone whose system is no longer braced for impact as a sign that something is missing, that the intensity you have confused with passion is absent, and therefore this cannot be the real thing. Your nervous system does not lie, but it can be misread. Understand what has been happening in your body in every significant relationship before this one. Your nervous system was working constantly, managing the ambient uncertainty of whether you were safe, whether you were enough, whether the connection was real or performed, whether the warmth would hold or retreat without warning. The hypervigilance of a system that had learned through early experience and reinforced through repetitive adult experience that love came with instability, that closeness came with cost, that the person across from you was someone to be monitored as much as they were someone to be loved. That monitoring is exhausting. It consumes the energy that genuine presence requires. And most people have been so continuously inside it that they have forgotten what it feels like to be in another person's presence. Without it, when the soulmate arrives, the monitoring stops, not because you decided to trust, not because you made a conscious choice to lower your guard based on evidence gathered over time, but because something in your nervous system below the level of conscious decision in the preverbal architecture where your earliest experiences of safety or its absence are stored simply recognizes that there is nothing to monitor. The exhale arrives before the analysis, before a track record is established, before the logical case for trust has been assembled. It arrives because your nervous system is responding to something that logic is too slow to process: the specific, real, energetically transmitted quality of someone who is genuinely, completely, without agenda present with you. Here is the brutal realization that will challenge everything you have been calling intensity. The relationships that felt most alive, most passionate, most consuming, most like the kind of love that stories are written about, were frequently the most activating, the most anxiety-producing, the most continuously uncertain. And you read that activation as depth, as the natural intensity of something real and significant, as the price of loving fully. What you were actually reading was your nervous system's response to chronic unpredictability. And chronic unpredictability is not passion. It is dysregulation wearing passion's clothing. The soulmate does not activate your nervous system. They settle it. That settling, that specific, unprecedented, almost disorienting calm is your body's recognition arriving before your mind has caught up. Trust the exhale. It has never I'd like to you. The second sign is quieter than the first, more interior, harder to describe in the language of ordinary relationship experience because it requires a level of self-awareness about your own interior that most people only develop after significant inner work. The silence with them has a different quality. Not all silence is equal. Most people know this experientially, even if they have never articulated it directly. There is the silence of two people who have run out of things to say and are managing the discomfort of the gap. There is the silence of someone performing ease while internally rehearsing the next statement. There is the silence of someone who is present in body and absent in interior, whose attention has wandered to management of how they are being perceived rather than remaining in genuine contact with the person they are with. And then there is the silence that arrives rarely and specifically between two people who are genuinely present with each other without requiring the continuous performance of presence to maintain the connection. This silence does not need to be filled. It does not generate the specific social anxiety of a gap that must be closed before someone notices. It does not feel like a failure of conversation. It feels like a continuation of it, like the words and the absence of words are both expressions of the same genuine contact. Your intuition knows the difference between these silences in your body before your mind processes them. The first kinds produce a subtle tension, a readiness, the orientation of someone who is managing an interaction. The soulmate silence produces something else entirely, a specific, deeply unfamiliar quality of rest, of two people occupying the same space without the performance that most human proximity requires. You will know this silence when you experience it, not because someone described it to you, but because your nervous system will register it as profoundly, almost confusingly different from every silence you have navigated before. Do not fill it, inhabit it. It is one of the rarest forms of genuine connection available. The third sign cuts deeper, and it requires you to sit with something honest about yourself before it can land with its full weight. Your shadow, the accumulated, unacknowledged, carefully concealed complexity of the parts of yourself you were taught. They were unacceptable feels, safe with them. Not because they have never seen anything difficult in you. Not because the relationship has been free of the moments where the less curated version of yourself surfaced unexpectedly, but because when it surfaced, when the anxiety appeared, when the wound activated, when the pattern you have been working to heal showed itself in a moment of genuine vulnerability, their response was not withdrawal, was not the subtle distancing that most people perform when someone they care about becomes more complex than they were prepared to receive. Their response was presence, the specific, steady, genuinely available presence of someone who is not threatened by your darkness because they have sat with their own. Here is the brutal psychological truth that this sign is built on. Most of the relationships in your life required you to manage the presentation of yourself to remain acceptable within them, to curate which parts were visible and which parts remained hidden, not through deliberate deception, but through the deeply conditioned habit of someone who learned early that their full complexity was more than most people's capacity to hold. The Soulmate does not require the curation. They are not made uncomfortable by the full version. They do not withdraw from the complexity or attempt to resolve it into something more manageable or communicate through silence or distance or the specific cooling of their attention that the parts of you that are difficult are the parts that should remain invisible. Your soul knows the difference between someone who loves the curated version and someone who is genuinely present with the whole. And it communicates that knowledge with a specific, physical, unmistakable sense of permission to be fully real that arrives in your body before your mind can assess whether it is warranted. The shadow recognizing safety is not a small thing. It is perhaps the most precise signal the soul possesses, because the parts of you that are hardest to love are the parts whose response to genuine love is the most unmistakable. The fourth sign is spatial, temporal, located in the specific way your experience of time changes in their presence and in their absence. Time moves differently with them. This is not a metaphor. Your perception of the passage of time is directly connected to the quality of your attention. Tian. When you are anxious, when your mind is moving between past and future, between monitoring and managing and anticipating, time feels contracted, pressured. The specific, compressed quality of someone who is not fully present in any moment because their attention is distributed across multiple concerns simultaneously. When you are genuinely present, when the quality of contact with another person is deep, enough to draw your full attention into the immediate reality of being with them, time expands. Hours become what minutes were. The specific, almost startling experience of looking up and discovering that more time has passed than your awareness registered is not accidental. It is the signal of genuine presence, of two people so fully in contact with each other that the ordinary mental machinery of timekeeping, which runs in the background of every interaction that requires management, simply stops running. Notice what your experience of time does with this person, not as a test, as information. Your nervous system's relationship with time in their presence is a precise instrument for measuring the quality of your genuine contact with them. And notice what time it does in their absence. The soulmate's absence has a specific quality too, not the anxious, destabilizing absence of someone whose unavailability activates your attachment wound, but the grounded, patient, genuinely comfortable experience of someone whose presence is so established in your interior that their physical absence does not create the specific hollowness of someone who needs another person to feel complete. You carry them with you, not as an obsession, as a warmth, as a stable interior presence that does not require constant external renewal to remain real. Your relationship with time is one of your soul's most honest instruments. What it does with them and without them is information worth receiving. The fifth sign is the deepest, the most interior, the most difficult to articulate, and the most unmistakable when experienced. Your future self stops feeling like a stranger. Most people carry a specific, quiet, rarely examined disconnection from their own future. Not because they do not think about it, they think about it constantly. But because the future self they imagine lives in a world whose emotional reality they cannot quite access from the present, too distant, too close, ongoing on circumstances not yet established, too organized around versions of happiness that feel, in the honest interior, more like theoretical constructs than genuine possibilities. When the soulmate arrives, something changes in the felt experience of your own future. The future becomes present, not in the naive, premature certainty of someone projecting a fantasy, but in the specific, grounded, almost quietly ordinary sense of a person who suddenly has genuine access to what living fully feels like. You begin to want things you had stopped wanting, to imagine possibilities you had quietly abandoned, to feel, in the specific territory of your own interior, the specific warmth of someone who is no longer simply enduring their present life, but building toward a future that feels genuinely real. This is your soul recognizing alignment, the specific, cellular, below the level of language recognition of a person in whose presence the full version of your life becomes not just possible, but immediately, tangibly, presently accessible. When your future self stops being a stranger, your soul is telling you something your mind will spend months trying to verify. The soul already knows. It has known from the beginning. Here is where the 5 signs converge into a single, unified, deeply personal demand. Not a demand from this script, a demand from the part of you that has been reading this with the specific, physical, interior recognition of someone who is not encountering new ideas, but finding precise language for something already known. Something your body has been carrying as knowing for longer than your mind has been willing to receive it. The soul does not speak in arguments. It does not build a case or present evidence or wait for the logical conditions to be met before delivering its recognition. It speaks in the specific, physical, immediate, impossible to fake language of the 5 signs that have just been described. And if those signs are present not all at once, not in the clean, unambiguous way that a checklist requires, but in the real, complex, sometimes confusing way that genuine soul recognition actually arrives, then something in you knows. You have known for a while, and here is the brutal truth that this knowing demands. Stop asking the wrong people whether what you feel is real. The people you have been asking, however well-intentioned, however genuinely invested in your well-being, are answering from their own history, their own wounds, their own particular relationship with the possibility of genuine love. Their answers are about them, not about what your soul is actually recognizing. Stop requiring the recognition to make logical sense before you trust it. Logic is a tool for navigating the known. Soul recognition operates in the territory of the genuinely new, the genuinely unprecedented, which is by definition the territory that logic has no prior data for. Your mind will never be able to verify what your soul already knows. Not because the knowing is irrational, but because it operates at a speed and depth that rational processing cannot match. and stop protecting yourself from the full reception of this recognition with the specific, intelligently constructed, completely understandable defenses of someone who has been hurt before and has decided, somewhere beneath the conscious level, that the safest response to genuine love is to be cautious about receiving it. The caution is not protection. It is the specific form of self-abandonment available to someone who has decided that their own soul's knowing is less reliable than their history of being wrong. Your history of being wrong was not a failure of intuition. It was intuition operating in the presence of genuine confusion, the confusion of a nervous system that had not yet learned to distinguish between the familiar activation of an old wound and the genuine, unprecedented recognition of something new. You have learned the difference now. That is what the inner work was for. That is what every difficult relationship that clarified what genuine meeting is not was preparing you to recognize. This is genuine meeting. Your soul is not confused about it. Your nervous system is exhaling. Your silence has a different quality. Your shadow feels safe. Time distorts in their presence. Your future self has stopped being a stranger. These are not reasons to be cautious. These are reasons to be fully, completely, without the protective qualification of someone who has been careful for so long they forgot what it felt like to be certain present. Here is the final truth that your soul has been waiting for you to receive. The soulmate is not the person who makes life easier. They are the person in whose presence the full version of your life becomes possible. Who calls forward the parts of you that had gone quiet under the accumulated weight of relationships that could not hold them? Who does not require you to be less complex, less deep, less genuinely yourself in order to remain in their presence? Who sees with the specific, penetrating, completely direct seeing of someone whose own depth makes them capable of genuine perception, not the curated version, the whole one, and who chooses it completely, without the need for management or reduction or the careful maintenance of a comfortable fiction about who you are. Your intuition has been right about them from the beginning, not because intuition is always right, because this time, this specific, unprecedented, qualitatively different time, it has access to something your history of being hurt was temporarily preventing you from receiving: the truth of genuine recognition. Trust it, not with the tentative, 1 foot in trust of someone who is still preparing for disappointment, with the full, embodied, soul-level trust of someone who finally knows the difference. This is the one your soul recognized. Let yourself receive it completely.